Welcome to The Explainer. We're tackling a massive one today. One of the biggest questions out there, really. Does God exist? We're going to break down a fascinating debate between two thinkers who are on completely opposite sides of this.
Okay, so how do you even begin to tackle a question that huge? Well, you start with the people arguing about it. And in this case, we've got two thinkers whose worldviews are, let's just say, polar opposites. They're coming from completely different universes of thought. Let's meet them. All right, so in one corner, you've got Dr. Mufti Yasir Nadeem Al Wajidi. He's an Islamic scholar, and for him, the idea of a divine creator, that's the bedrock. It's the foundation for everything. And then in the other corner, we have Awais Iqbal. He's an atheist author, and his starting point is the complete opposite. He argues that all religions are basically man-made stories we created to make sense of the world around us. So right out of the gate, before they even get into the big stuff, they hit a snag. It's about the rules of engagement. A classic debate question, really. Who has the burden of proof? I mean, who has to go first and actually prove their case? Awais Iqbal's take on this is pretty straightforward. He's basically saying, hey, religion is the one making this huge, extraordinary claim, that God exists. So he thinks the burden of proof is totally on the person who believes. From his point of view, the default setting should be, I don't believe it until you show me some solid evidence. But Dr. Yasir just completely flips that right on its head. He argues that if you look at all of human history, believing in a creator isn't some new claim. It's been the default for forever. He says, look at ancient civilizations. They pretty much all had some concept of a higher power. So from his perspective, atheism is the new kid on the block, the one challenging the status quo. And because of that, it's the atheist who has the burden of proof. Okay, so after that initial back and forth about who has to prove what, the debate dives into its first really big philosophical puzzle. And this is where things get, kind of mind-bending. We're talking about the nature of time, space, and existence itself. Buckle up. So Awais Iqbal throws out this major challenge, right? It's a question that's designed to trip you up. He asks, okay, if God created time and space, then where was God before time and space existed? I mean, think about it. It's a really tough question. How can something exist outside the very things, time and space, that we use to define, existence? Now, Dr. Yasser's response is really interesting. He doesn't give a straight answer. Instead, he uses an analogy to kind of shift how you're thinking about it. He says, imagine a computer. The person who built the computer isn't inside the computer, right? You wouldn't find them in the motherboard or swimming in the code. And he says it's the same idea. The creator of time and space can't be stuck inside the rules of time and space. By definition, the creator has to be outside of the creation. So the key takeaway from Dr. Yasser's point is this. Asking where or when God was before time is, it's a logical trap. He calls it a false equivalence. Basically, it's the mistake of taking the rules of our physical, time-based world and trying to apply them to something that, by definition, isn't physical and isn't bound by time. It's kind of like asking, hey, what's north of the North Pole? The question itself doesn't make sense in that context. All right, so they've been talking about these really abstract cosmic ideas of time and space. Now the debate pivots to something a lot more down to earth, something we all deal with every day, morality. Good and evil. Why do these concepts even exist, and what, if anything, does that tell us about the universe? So Dr. Yasser tries to build a logical argument for God, but this time using morality. It goes something like this. Premise 1. If there's no conscious creator, the universe would just be uniform. It'd be either all good or all evil, no mix. Premise 2. But our universe isn't uniform. We see both good and evil all the time. So his conclusion is that this mix, this duality, can only be explained if a conscious creator made it this way, specifically as a kind of test for us humans. Awais Iqbal comes right back and attacks the very foundation of that argument. He basically says, hold on a second. Good and evil aren't some objective things floating around in the universe. He argues they're just subjective labels that we humans made up, things that change from culture to culture. From his scientific point of view, all this variation in human behavior isn't some divine test. It's just the messy, predictable result of evolution, genetics, and the simple drive to survive. And this disagreement over where morality comes from, it leads us straight into the final showdown. This is probably the biggest roadblock in the whole debate. It's a total collision of worldviews, and it all comes down to one question. What role should science play when we're trying to answer these massive questions about existence? See,
Throughout this whole thing, Awais Iqbal's go-to tool is science. He uses biology, physics, cosmology, you name it, to poke holes in the claims made by religious texts. For him, the process is simple. If a story from a holy book contradicts what we know from science, then the story has got to be wrong. End of story. But this is where you see just how far apart they are. Dr. Yasir makes a really interesting move here. He doesn't quote a religious text. Instead, he quotes the U.S. National Academy of Sciences. And their statement basically says that science is designed to study the natural world. That's its job. And since God, in most religions, is considered supernatural, well, science just doesn't have the right equipment to prove or disprove it. It's like trying to measure feelings with a tape measure. Wrong tool for the job.
And that's really the heart of the problem, isn't it? That's the impasse. You have one side using the rules of the natural world, science, to judge claims about the supernatural. And the other side is saying, whoa, you can't use that rule book for this game. It doesn't apply. So it leaves us with this really big, fascinating question. Are these two ways of seeing the world just too different? Are they speaking completely different languages? To the point where finding any kind of common ground, any shared truth is just impossible?